Before I get into today's podcast and share some of the developments, I wanted to first be very clear about why I am doing these podcasts in the first place. When the case was filed on February 16th, 2024, I had no intention of going public. None at all. I was moving towards getting to an expedient discovery phase, and discovery phase is when both parties exchange information, and that would lead up to trial. So, of course, during the discovery phase, there's depositions. Both sides have the ability to interview each other based on the subject matter at hand, related and relative to this work, Sabotage. And as soon as the defendants filed their absurd motion to dismiss, I could see exactly where this was going. But I still held to keeping everything private. Then, when the judge was handed all of the information and, moreover, was given the audio file of Whitney Welch, which you have heard, that is the February 8th phone call, it's at least a portion of it, in her direct admissions of the sabotage, her direct naming of the individuals, etc., and this was in complete compliance with the Virginia State Code 18.2-499 regarding the sabotaging of a person's, an employee's, trade, business, profession, etc. She met all the requirements. I met all of the requirements for the Virginia State Code. So it really wasn't something that I felt needed to be shared with the people of this country. I figured the information will come out, the trial will happen, the case will be in the law books, and people can refer to it at such time. I had no need to bring everybody into this on a public level. But what happened next is that the judge sat on this for months. There used to be something called the 60-day rule, and that required judges to render a decision in 60 days. But as you're going to find out, the law changes all the time, but it doesn't change for you and me. It changes for them, meaning it changes for judges, it changes for politicians, it changes for corporate executives. Laws are rewritten, remanded, reversed all the time. That's why there's tens of thousands of laws, because they've been changed arbitrarily, without your knowledge, without my knowledge, but done to protect the interests of the people who control the system. So when it came time for the judge to render his decision, as I said, it took months, I decided at that point to at least go public with a GoFundMe page. And the GoFundMe page was a place for me to place some of the legal filings, to let people know, hey, I'm putting the GoFundMe page out there. This is what's going on. But I didn't speak to anybody directly about anything going on in the case because I didn't want to name names. And as you'll see, if you go to the GoFundMe page, or if you've already been there, the filings were redacted, meaning every name, every title, etc., was removed. I was protecting the guilty, but I felt like I didn't want to bring them into the fold, as we're going to anyway be going into discovery and going into a trial. That, of course, would only be until a judge ignores all the evidence and makes up new rules. So I went public when the judge made new rules, who consulted annotated indexes, meaning hidden from you and me, and absolutely bizarre rulings. All right. That is when I went public. And I will share with you what he wrote, and I'll share with you where this is going at another time. But that is the reason that I went public. As of about 10 days ago, Whitney Welch was fired. Now, before you get too teary-eyed about Whitney's termination, Whitney is the one who basically sabotaged me and terminated me. So she was fine going about the destruction of my life and my career. Whitney would have gotten approval from someone. It's highly unlikely that she took it upon herself, but we can find that out at trial if she did take it upon herself. And that would be very interesting in a litigious company such as Dal-tile Mohawk Industries. And the fact that Whitney had HR on the phone, Robert Gore, during the termination, it would appear that there was some kind of consultations, unless Robert Gore of HR and Whitney, the vice president with Dal-tile, collectively just the two of them got together and decided to terminate me. But I have a feeling that, as I said, as litigious as Dal-tile Mohawk Industries would be, that if Robert Gore thought that Whitney was just terminating me for her own reasons, that he'd probably ring it up the flagpole. He'd want to check to make sure that that was okay. And he'd probably want to check with Whitney's superior, Scott Meslowski, to see, hey, Scott, do you know anything about the situation? Did you give Whitney permission to derail Mark's career? So the conversations that were taking place internally with Mohawk and Dal-tile at the time are of important significance. Because when Whitney was fired, what do you think was her golden parachute? In other words, a young mother of two has given her life so far to Dal-tile. Was she following orders from someone at Mohawk? Following orders from someone at Dal-tile? Was she the pawn in the game? Was she the sacrificial lamb? Because if so, wouldn't this mother of two, bleeding Dal-tile, as she said, wouldn't she have a lawsuit against Dal-tile? Of course she would. So don't feel too bad for Whitney. Whitney is doing fine. She has received a very nice payout for her participation in this scam. I don't think Whitney foresaw that she was going to end up leaving Dal-tile, but she didn't leave penniless. So there's a big difference there. Just after the audio submission, which included a portion of the February 8th conversation with Whitney Welch, in which she names the various players, so Claire Copertino, Clara Jean Donahue, Christine Phillips, Steve Radford, all as collaborating in the sabotaging of my career. It turns out that Steve Radford was summarily dismissed, likely with a package. Steve had been with Dal-tile for quite a while before leaving and then came back and had taken over the Virginia Beach showroom. And so he was under Christine Phillips' direction. And after that near altercation, which Whitney witnessed and put on a recording, she also let me know that no corrective action was taken against Steve. Well, of course not, because as you will hear right now, Christine Phillips doesn't do corrective actions. She doesn't do performance improvement plans. She handles things off the record. Yes.
Know that you impact Claire. She's a very emotional woman.
Yes.
And you guys have not gotten off to a good start. So she has good intentions. You have good intentions. Y'all just misunderstand each other.
Okay.
I like you both equally. Okay. So,
that's cool.
I've been coaching her on the side. I don't really have to coach you. I just have to guide you on who to go for what and those sort of things because you're new to the organization. Whereas her, she has all that down. She just needs help with, like, speaking. And I'm like, she called me crying, and I'm like, it was literally only 4 minutes because I had to hang up on her. But I was like, well, what all did you say back? And she's like, well, I said some things I'm not proud of. I'm like, well, fuck, Claire. That's not good.
Yeah.
Why'd you do that? And she's like, Whitney, I just got really emotional. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. I was like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
well,
she's not perfect.
But this is a new experience for me because I've never worked in an organization before where people could get away with not doing their job. And so I've never been a part of a place where there's different management sects that can't come to sort of any kind of agreement together, and one sort of overrides the other, but one is penalized and should, it's just weird.
Yeah.
But anyway,
final question.
Oh, okay.
It's a rhetorical question, but ask me if Christine has ever done a PIP, a corrective action, or fired anybody.
Has she ever?
Has she ever done a PIP, a corrective action, or fired anybody?
I'm going to say she has not.
The answer is no across the board, because she, quote, handles things via phone off the record, and therefore never moves the needle.
So in other words, You can do or commit violence against someone else in the company and completely get away with it. If you're working for a regional director or a regional vice president like Christine Phillips. But Christine Phillips would only be doing that kind of behavior because of the externalities trickling down to her from someone like Scott Maslowski. So we've got chess pieces falling, and you can be sure that they are figuring out what the moves are to see how they can get away with all of this. So, of course, they're bleaching documents. They're trying to get rid of people. They're covering up stuff. But all of that was in my legal filings. I already said that was what they were going to do. First, they would try to delay, and then they would try to destroy. And that's what they're doing. Interestingly, the Claire Copertino video that shows how Dal-tile Mohawk Industries had sabotaged, hijacked my email from day one was uploaded to YouTube now twice. And both times they've had it removed. Because, you see, right now I'm too far over the target. And they don't like the fact that this case, this lawsuit, is way deeper in terms of those that were necessary to coordinate the sabotage than you would think. So it's not a simple employee termination. It is a corrupt company from the top with lots of different players doing lots of different things because I was asking lots of questions. And those questions were pointing directly at some very serious irregularities. What's going to happen next? We've got Steve Radford removed. We've got Whitney Welch removed. This chessboard is clearing up. Who do you think will be next? Who's in the line of fire next to ensure that Dal-tile Mohawk Industries can cover up as much of the damage and not be responsible for the triple damages that they are for having conspired, having collaborated, for having allowed members of their organization to deliberately, intentionally, maliciously destroy someone's career? Out of curiosity, are any of you interested in working for Dal-tile or Mohawk Industries, knowing what you know now? Are you interested in getting into a legal dispute and seeing if a judge will use the Constitution of 1787, which the Founding Fathers guaranteed from the outset of the formation of this country as the first and foremost supreme law of the land to supersede all other laws? To defend your rights to your own personal and private property, to your intellectual property? Well, now you're seeing how it works. Now you're seeing weaponized lawfare at its best. Stay tuned. We have a lot to cover, and thank you for listening.